Real Madrid. Their new tactics are wild but genius. This video is brought to you by The Purest Football.
In the 2023-24 season, Real Madrid will be looking to bounce back after last year's disappointing La Liga campaign and comprehensive Champions League exit. But with the major loss of Karim Benzema and marquee signing of Jude Bellingham, Carlo Ancelotti has a lot to consider when preparing for the season, and from what we've seen so far, he's being pretty bold. In pre-season, Real Madrid have shifted to an entirely new system, the now rarely seen 4-4-2 diamond, with Bellingham playing not as a midfield controller, but as a number
diamond.
10.
Wow.
So the question is, how does this system work, and will it be able to take Real Madrid back to the top? That's what we're discussing today, so if you enjoy, make sure to leave a like, and let's get into it. Before I talk specifically about the diamond, it's useful to understand Angelotti's philosophy more broadly, because regardless of the shape on paper, in practice this is a very fluid system. As you probably know, Ancelotti is not a positional play coach, so when you see his players moving, they aren't just rotating around a predefined structure like you'd see from a Guardiola or Arteta. Instead, they're given more autonomy to find and create space. So it's quite common to see these midfielders stray pretty far from their starting positions and not resembling any coached structure. So like here, or like here. Each possession is
Cool. That's a tactic that we looked at in a video about relationism in football. I did not like relationism. In fact, you can go back and watch that reaction that I did. A lot of people were getting after me in the comments because I much prefer positional play, the more Pep Guardiola style of tactics, where it's sort of removing some of the creativity from the players. Because we want to run a more rigid system. I'm less fluid, I think, than these tactics look to me. And there's trade-offs. There's trade-offs in everything in football. There's trade-offs in everything in life. The trade-off with relationism and a less rigid structure of tactics is the potential for mistakes, for things to go off script, and for the players to not perform to the manager's expectation. The trade-off with positional play is players can become a little bit more robotic. They're stuck to a script more than, and for some players who like to create magic, who like to be a more finesse style player where they're making things happen on their own, for those guys, a positional style coach might not be the best for them, and so there's trade-offs that you have to make. So anyway, I've gone on too long talking here. Let's get back to the video.
Essentially unique and therefore unpredictable. It's a system of principles rather than repeatable patterns. In the hands of elite players, particularly Kroos and Modric, those principles make Real Madrid a very good possession side. In build-up, they often use that freedom to create numerical superiority. So here, Modric is dropped into a right-back position, Tchouaméni is also dropped into the back line, Bellingham comes deep to receive, and the sheer numbers make this really hard to press. And when Bellingham eventually does pick it up and switch into space, Vinicius and Rodrigo have both converged on the left touchline to continue that progression. And these kind of very free, fluid possessions have become a staple of this team. In fact, last year, compared to the traditional possession kings, Barcelona, Real Madrid not only had more long possessions, but those possessions lasted longer and involved more passes, contributing to a more patient, control-heavy style overall. So Real Madrid have been and will continue to be very good on the ball. The question for this season is, how effective can they be at putting it in the back of the net, especially in the...
You see, so I sort of take back what I was saying earlier. It really does boil down to which players do you have on the pitch? If you have players like Kroos, Tony, if you have players like Tony and like Luka Modric, you got players that are quality like this, then you let them drive, because they're going to figure out creative ways as a team with the teamwork there to really have a beautiful brand of football. That's very interesting to me.
Absence of Benzema, who contributed to 25% of all Real Madrid's goals last year. That's 30 goals from an XG of 26.6. And I think that's where this new system comes into play, specifically with the role of Bellingham at the tip of the diamond. Now, what's been interesting about Bellingham so far is that he's being used less of a controlling force in midfield and actually more of a forward outlet. In fact, he's been doing quite a lot of running in behind, and rather than getting his foot on the ball and dictating things, it's notable just how often he's making these runs, which I think is really interesting, and for me shows Angelotti putting quite a lot of faith in Bellingham, not just to be a tidy metronomic midfielder, but a major source of goals and assists in this team.
So he's like a
Shifting his
finisher.
focus to stretching the back line, getting into the box, and really making up for the loss of Benzema. So, for those of you who watched my last video, this early version of Bellingham as a 10 looks more Raumdeuter than it does Enganche. Now, obviously, he will be much more than
That
just a
reference is
runner,
lost on
and
me.
on a broader level, this system is really all about the combinations between him and these forwards, Vinicius, Rodrigo, and whoever else. And it has the potential to be really exciting. On the surface, the system is very simple. Both fullbacks hold the width, there's a single or double pivot behind the ball, and then significant freedom for the forwards to move and combine. And the success or failure of it will be based on the relationships between these players. Now, that could take time to form. There are signs that they're still learning each other's movement and tendencies, which is completely normal. You wouldn't say it's entirely fluid just yet, but when it clicks, it does look very good, and the freedom to create overloads in forward areas as well as in build-up can be a major source of chance creation. But all of that said, there are definitely question marks with this system. For example, will this hybrid forward role get the best out of Vinicius Jr.? Does he have the movement and instincts to operate at times as a centre forward? There is also the general question of goals, and particularly box threat. When the ball goes wide, their only real focal point is Joselu, who signed from Espanyol, and although he had a good return last season and scored this golazo in pre-season, it would be very surprising if he gave them the same level as Benzema, especially in the big moments. And then even in possession, which is certainly one of Madrid's strengths, they still feel a little bit reliant on the qualities of Modric and Kroos, so whether they can maintain the same level if you start phasing those players out is definitely up for debate. And if that wasn't all enough, you've got the looming figure of Mbappe.
That's a fantastic thought. Does this style of tactics, do they work with if you are able to take the players out? I think with a system managed like Pep Guardiola, you can plug any sort of player into that system and Pep can get the best out of them because his tactics are so rigid. I mean, they're fluid in some sense, but there's definitely the ability for any player who is quality to get in there and actually perform well. But if you have a more loose structure where the tactics aren't so rigid, they're very, very much more fluid, then players might not actually be able to perform well if you have to substitute players in. So like if an injury unfortunately takes out players like Modric or Kroos, then does it all fall apart? Unfortunately, Madrid is going to have to deal with the fact that they have lost a goalkeeper. Courtois, ACL injury. He's out for the season. That's going to be a big blow for them defensively. I'm going to go ahead and end the video here. What do you guys think of the new tactics? Do you think that this is going to work for them? What do you think about Madrid's season coming up? What do you think about my thoughts here? I probably said things that are so naive. Guys, got to remember, I'm only 9 months into this, so have some grace on me. All right, I'll see you guys in the next video.